Welcome to Raise Your Voice, a show that talks about progressive ideas and features some great local and regional music. I'm Laurie Donohue and I'll be your host. I want to thank Dave Kirkpatrick for producing the show and Paul Belanger and Susie Bromagem for providing the show's musical IDs. For my guest today, I'd like to introduce Amanda Toll. She is a resident of Keene and is running for New Hampshire State Representative in Cheshire District 16. Amanda is a single mother, a yoga teacher, and a business owner. She believes we have a tremendous opportunity for positive growth by attracting young people and creating more opportunities for people from all walks of life. The key to doing this is creating a state that is green, has great schools, an environment where local businesses can thrive, and is warm and welcoming toward all, including immigrants, people of color, women, and the LGBTQ folks. Welcome, Amanda.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Laurie.
Glad that you're here. First, I'd like to start with you telling us a little bit more about yourself and a little bit about your business.
Great, I'm happy to do that. So I've been in Keene for almost 5 years, and I have been a progressive activist since my college days. And I own a small business in downtown Keene called Ms. Amanda's Compassionate Ice Cream, where I make vegan ice cream sweetened with local maple syrup. And we have a focus on sustainability and feminism. So it made sense that I would bring my progressive political ideas to my business as a single mother and a longtime feminist activist.
That sounds great. How long have you been doing that?
So Ms. Amanda's Compassionate Ice Cream has been open for a little bit over a year, and we are available at the Farm Cafe in Keene, Country Life Vegetarian Restaurant, the Monadnock Food Co-op,
Sure.
and Nature's Green Grocer in Peterborough.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to have to try that. Sounds great.
Yeah, it has, because it's sweetened with local New Hampshire maple syrup, it really is nice to have a product that where it's, especially now in the summertime on a hot day, that feels like a local sweet treat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds great. So I want to ask you, if you're doing ice cream, how did you get involved with politics?
It's a great question. So I'm going to go back a little bit and give you a little history. So I became politicized when I was a teenager, and I had an unplanned pregnancy, and I decided that I wanted to terminate it. And that in and of itself is a politicizing experience. Unfortunately, in this country, when I looked in the phone book for abortion services, I found what now I know is a crisis pregnancy center, which are people that pretend to give out accurate information about abortion, but it's skewed and it's very right-wing.
Wow.
And so that was unfortunate. And then I also needed to get parental permission.
Sure.
And so that was when I first came into contact with abortion access barriers. And once I was able to terminate the pregnancy, I did feel tremendous relief. And I learned about how the Democratic Party was the party that advocated for a woman's right to choose, and that people in the Democratic Party had compassion and empathy towards young women like myself who made an error and didn't want to be. I couldn't take that on at that point in my life, and I was so grateful to be able to have access to safe, legal abortion, even with the access barriers. And that decision allowed me to go to college. It allowed me to go to graduate school and get an MED, to have a child when I was ready, to run my own business, and now to run today for state rep. And so I feel a sense of responsibility to help empower others and make sure bodily autonomy, which is under attack in this country by the right consistently. Not only that, we continue to have what we have, but to expand it. So GLBTQ folks and poor women and women of color, that they have access to bodily autonomy as well, so that we both have legal abortion and just access to health care, including reproductive health care in general.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the whole idea of abortion is so stigmatized for the woman. And to come out and say that you chose that in your life is a very courageous thing to do, even in these days.
Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that. And when I was in college, I attended Hampshire College in Amherst, Mass, which is a progressive town. I took a class called The Politics of the Abortion Debate with a woman named Marlene Freed, who is the founder of the National Network of Abortion Funds. And she has an organization called the Civil Liberties and Public Policy Program. And as a college student, I ended up volunteering for them. And every year they put on a national conference in Amherst that's for free, called From Abortion Rights to Social Justice, Transforming the Movement for Reproductive Freedom. And the conference opens with an abortion speak out where people share their stories. And so I got to speak alongside at that conference Black feminists, including like Loretta Ross and GLBTQ folks. And you realize that reproductive justice, this is something that affects people of all ages and classes and race, and it's really important that we not just think about legal abortion, because white rich women will always have access to abortion.
Certainly.
But that we are thinking about how can we both protect bodily autonomy, including abortion rights, which is incredibly important, but also make sure that when people do want to have children, that they can have them safely and that they can raise them in an environment where they have the resources they need to raise them well, including access to healthcare and education.
Well, and that's true. It's not just about abortion. It's about birth control. It's about health care for women. It all seems to be under attack these days.
It is. And in New Hampshire, unfortunately, Governor Sununu, who likes to tout himself as a moderate, but is not a moderate, just vetoed the Reproductive Health Parity Act. So, so we wanted to the House, and the legislative body wanted to expand access to abortion in New Hampshire, and he vetoed that. And so, even here in New Hampshire, we do have a right-wing movement that is trying to limit bodily autonomy. And part of the reason I'm sharing my story as a candidate is so that people understand how important people who haven't had to walk that path, because those of us who walked it, we know how important it is, but that people understand how important it is to both protect the rights we have and to expand upon them. And Governor Sununu is not going to expand our rights. So I think it's really important that we vote blue and that we both move beyond Donald Trump, and here in New Hampshire, move beyond Chris Sununu.
It's amazing to me that in this day and age, I thought we had moved farther than we have, and now it just seems like we have taken a huge step backward, especially for women's rights and women's health. It's a scary thing to see what's happening these days, and we need people like you to step up and make noise about it. Yeah. I think that the women's marches that we had were very successful in bringing some of those issues to light, but it seems that we have had kind of a lull in that, and that it's moved more toward the Black Lives Matter movement, which is they're all kind of wrapped up in together now, which is also a good thing.
Yeah, I am a full believer in the Black Lives Matters movement, and as I was saying when we were talking about reproductive rights earlier, who suffers when we don't have reproductive freedom? It will always be poor women, and disproportionately women of color, who suffer the consequences of these decisions. And any issue that is a gender issue, unfortunately, women of color, especially Black women, are feeling it more. So we have a gender wage gap, but we also have a race wage gap. So if you're a woman of color, you're facing both. And so we know that Black women are getting paid significantly less in this country to do the same work as white men. And I'm so happy to see people finally rising up against the injustice, and I think, having the Black Lives Matters movement be so vocal. And I saw like the women's, I forgot what it's called, but the women's basketball players, like the women's version of the NBA, they were all wearing shirts I saw on MSNBC that said, "Say her name," to bring attention to the unjust murder of Breonna Taylor. So it's really important that we give as much attention to women's issues, but definitely to women of color. They need to be front and center, their voices, and we need to be paying attention and listening and supporting and advocating. They can for their rights. And in New Hampshire, I attended the Black Lives Matters protests. We had a really big one in Keene, and I'm a supporter, and I'm a believer, and I think that all of these issues are interconnected: climate justice, gender equality, and racial justice. And so I want to play a role. The reason I'm running is to help create a more progressive, feminist New Hampshire that, as you said, is welcoming towards all, a place where immigrants feel welcome, that people of color feel valued and welcome, and not that we don't have public policy that's just in the corner of people who already have power, supporting white men and corporations and corporate interests. And I think the Trump administration and the Sununu administration, they're not on the side of working class families. They're not on the side of people of color. They're not on the side of gender equality. But we're seeing more young progressive folks challenging that. You see this, all 4 members of the squad recently won their primaries. So we got to keep working.
We do. We do. So we're going to I wanted to get more into this, but we're going to take a break now to introduce our musical guest for today. Her name is Annie Lynch. She's a singer, songwriter, and guitarist. She has performed at the Philadelphia Folk Festival, UK's End of the Road, Bristol Rhythm Roots Reunion, and has shared the stages with the Lumineers, Josh Ritter, Justin Townes Earl, and many others. Since her 2007 debut, Annie has released 2 albums and an EP. Annie has received wide-ranging critical praise from publications like the Boston Globe, Washington Post, and American Songwriter. You can learn more about Annie at her website, annielynchmusic.com. And here she is singing her song, In the Water.
I'm going down to that place, going down by the riverside where I see my face in the water, and the tall grass grows where the river overflows, where the rain falls heavy on that place. I see my face in the water. Some days I get lost out there, where the river only takes water it's handed. So I'm gonna run down to that place where I can find my own face in the water. I'm going down to that place, going down by the riverside where I see my face in the water, and the tall grass grows where the river overflows, where the rain falls heavy on that place. I see my face in the water. Some days I get lost out there, where the river only takes water it's handed. So I'm gonna run down to that place where I can find my own face in the water. I'm going down to that place, going down by the riverside where I see my face in the. I'm going down to that place, going down by the riverside where I see my face in. I'm going down to that place, going down by the riverside where I see my face in the water.
Thank you, Annie. That's a great song. I love that song. Thank you so much for being part of our program. So, Amanda, let's get back to a little bit more discussion about what you find important. I noticed on your website you are concerned with domestic violence and the two-party consent law.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. So, first of all, I want to say currently, Keene has 7 male representatives, and they're wonderful progressive men, and I have nothing against them. In fact, quite to the contrary, I respect them. However, I felt like it was time for someone to run who was going to bring issues of gender equality to the forefront, to talk, who's going to be out there talking about reproductive justice, and to talk about domestic violence, which disproportionately impacts women. And
Sure.
in New Hampshire, so the time for physical evidence for domestic violence, it's very short. And many women don't call the police for a variety of reasons. And in 38 other states in this country, you can use unconsented to recordings, like because you're the victim and the survivor is aware of the recording.
So you've agreed to it.
So you've agreed to it, and that the one party consent is enough. In New Hampshire courts, you can't. And this is really unfortunate because as we talked about, that period for physical evidence afterwards is very short, and many women, they're in a position of terror. They're scared about about child custody. Will social service come in and take my kids away? And so between the physical trauma, and especially if there's children involved, there's many reasons why during that period women may not go and contact the police. And so having recordings where you've confronted your abuser, or if there was a camera set up in the house and they caught it, or you're wearing a recording device on you, that can be really a critical piece of evidence to use when going to get a restraining order or in a child custody dispute. And New Hampshire women who have been victims and are now survivors of domestic violence are at a big disadvantage that we can't use that evidence in court. And so, I'm not running for president of the United States or for the Senate. It's limited in what I can change. So my focus is to introduce legislation in addition to speaking broadly and voting consistently progressive. I'm going to be a consistent progressive vote in the New Hampshire House, but to be an advocate around these issues and to propose legislation to change the law so that, like 38 other states, survivors of domestic violence can use recorded evidence that was not consented to by the abuser in court. And I think that would help women who are who need restraining orders and who are in child custody disputes tremendously. So that is really important to me and a critical component of why I'm running.
Yeah, I think that as a woman, you bring a different perspective. It doesn't mean that the men that are in the legislature are not concerned about it. However, they don't have the same perspective, the same experience, the same viewpoint that a woman can bring. So having all men represent the Keene area kind of narrows the argument in many ways. So I can see how that could really be helpful to women, especially women who have endured domestic violence, to bring that to the forefront.
Absolutely, definitely. I full-heartedly agree with what you said. There's nothing wrong with the progressive men that have served us up until this point. It's just, I've walked this path. I've had to exercise my right to choose. I've been a victim of sexual and domestic violence. I know what it's like to nurse a baby and be judged for it. So my experiences are just going to have me have a different emphasis. In addition to being a consistent progressive vote like these men are, I'm going to be getting out and I'm going to be talking about these issues as I'm doing with you.
Sure.
To help normalize them, because there is tremendous stigma in this country around issues like abortion and domestic violence. And so I think it's powerful to have somebody say, look, I've been there and now I am on the other side of it. And I'm going to go out there and do everything I can to help other women and empower them so that they can be on the other side of it too.
Yeah, and I think that there are other issues as well that sometimes are overlooked. For instance, equal pay for equal work. When you are earning a certain amount, you are not necessarily aware that your female coworker isn't getting that kind of pay. And that's something that needs to be brought up and continually reinforced. Because I've been there where I've been working, doing the same job and not getting paid the same amount simply because of my gender. And also coming up against discrimination when I was having a baby and I had to be out and I didn't get any any pregnancy leave. I didn't have any time off to spend with my child. And it's still that way in a lot of small businesses. So all these things, I think, as a female, become much more important.
I agree, and I'm sorry that you had those experiences, but it's not surprising,
Right.
and it's unfortunate, and it has to change. It really does. We need to have paid parental leave.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would be exciting to have someone like you represent us in the House.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here today, Laurie. Thank you for hosting me.
Oh, thank you for coming. I think this was great and really important issues. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're going to go again to Annie Lynch. She's going to sing us out with her last song.
Awesome.
And the name of that song is Find the Strength. A good one to end with.
Perfect.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Laurie.
I heard you had a run-in with your man. The words he said were stronger than his head. The lights went out, and then he ran away. But for his cruel actions, he will pay. So to hell with him. Brush your shoulders off, head back to the start, and find strength in those that love you, who you are. All the money in the whole wide world won't erase the damage to his girl. But time does heal the gruesome mist of wound. But Lord knows time is crawling by for you. So to hell with him, he's away. Feathers and tar. Find strength in those that love you for who you are. You are beautiful. Just remember that we may be far apart. I am sending hugs and kisses, and I know that you'll get through this just fine.